My name is Marten Schoenherr, and I'm the founder of a software development company called Automat. Alan asked me to provide some thoughts about serverless, and since I assume that the other colleagues in the panel for Alan look into the serverless topic, especially from telecommunications perspective, I might dig into the perspective from software development perspective, which is a little different, I guess. We have experience in using serverless, especially in development and testing phases, not so much in operations to start with. And we use AWS Lambda and Google Cloud Platform Functions. We know that there is Azure as well with serverless functions, but we've never used it. So maybe to not go into more details from the definition of terms perspective, but from a software development perspective, I can say that it's very natural to us to use serverless functions on cloud environments. I guess the reason is that it actually comes very natural because it's just the same paradigm as we're used from software development. So if you look into the evolution as software development is, we have a lot of separation of concerns in the past. We have abstraction levels. We use other people's code. So a lot of abstraction between the code you produce yourself and the code you use from other people. So for instance, if you develop some application for smartphones, you get a lot of functions from the ecosystem providers, Google and Apple, and using a local database, you use it via an SDK or an API or doing notifications. You just use other people's code and capabilities, and you read a description, what it does and how you should use it, how you should consume it or call it, what you hand over, what you get back, how it behaves, and you actually trust it, right? You develop your own code, you embed it into other people's code, and it's a very natural thing to do this. And for a developer anyways, it's always easy to use the same paradigms, let's say RESTful APIs, for instance, or SDKs, well, documented SDKs in different programming languages. So you're pretty independent from what language you use and in which context you use it. So the serverless, what has been like, I think AWS has been the first providing this, came very natural to software developers because it is basically the same as it would be with, for instance, the ecosystem of Android and Apple and iOS and many other things. So from that perspective, I can say you don't care about the hardware, how it works, how you need to configure it, how you automate it, etc. You just upload your code to someone who provides a runtime environment. And since it's called serverless, that kind of includes the mental concept of there is a server far away that is a piece of hardware. Of course, there is this kind of concept in this, but from our perspective, it's just as another other person's capability, and you actually use it the same way or similar way as you use many other things, right? So that's why for software developers it's pretty natural, and there's a lot of tools that come with it, right? And that's the same. We know this. If we work in a special framework, there are lots of tools. The community provides the tools. You read through it, you use it, you get better into it, and then you just live in that ecosystem. And that's the same here with serverless, right? We had a lot of DevOps in the past, and people that came from operations or went into the topic of automating, securing in cloud environments operations, and they had experience in the software stack and in the operations domain. Now, with the serverless, it kind of moves a little bit further and closer to the developer because it's even like, it's much more black box as many other things are in development, right? So whether this is good or bad, it's not a question, but from a developer's perspective, I would say the serverless ecosystem that came up in the last couple of years and is evolving is a very natural thing. And for us, we actually adopted it in software development and testing of solutions and applications. We do very much from the beginning of AWS, providing Lambda functions. And now we're even getting in closer to operations. Now here it's a little more tricky, I guess, depending on the use case and what the requirements of the applications are and how reliable it has to be, etc., etc. I'm sure that serverless environments might not meet all application scenarios. So the telecommunication environments many times still come with a 5x9 and other things which might not meet the cloud in the first place, and of course then serverless is even further away. But I think it's not a question if, but only when. As I mentioned, there are lots of tools, for instance, now for testing. If you actually do this ping pong between other people's code and runtime environments, etc., and then of course testing an end-to-end application is getting pretty much difficult. But that now comes with a lot of tools and a lot of approaches, and the community provides a lot of things here. And the providers of serverless like Google and AWS and Microsoft, they're really evolving in this. And so it's not going to take a long time until from a software development perspective, the toolchain is there to really provide good enough applications in that environment. There could be, think about some smart words at the end, actually, but there's no end of the discussion at the moment. I think that if you look into it, if you look into the serverless discussion from a developer's perspective, it's much more natural than it would be for someone who does operate applications. And there is still a gap, I guess, from the real-world perspective of operating something stable and within a specific price tag, let's call it that way. But I guess that as we see, there's a lot of money invested into this serverless stuff and the abstraction from the actual hardware of virtualized hardware to some function that you just expose via RESTful API or other standards. So I'm pretty sure that it's just a question of time when we will see the serverless topic, even in telecommunications applications that come with a tradition of being pretty much strict on their requirements. But here the question is that only when and not if, I would say. Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, and yeah, have a good night. Talk to you later.